game developers like you. Here's Chris DeLeon.
Thank you, Krister McFunkyPants, for the introduction. And I also want to thank Danny Baranowski for giving us permission to use his music tracks as the opening and closing songs for this Game Developers Like You podcast. I'm Chris DeLeon of Gamkedo, Gamkedo, and today's interview is a little bit different than the other ones in this series because today I'm interviewing Jay Bhavnani. And most people that I discuss game development with throughout the series are approximately my age, plus or minus maybe a decade. I'm a 30-year-old guy, so we're looking at 20 to 40 span, maybe a few a little bit over. In Jay's case, Jay, tell him, how old are you?
12.
12 years old at the time of this interview. And beyond the just neat thing of people who are this young making games, he's doing a great job of it. And as you're going to hear, he's not using drag and drop tools or Scratch or something. He's programming. And especially fascinating, I think my favorite thing to come from this interview, you're going to hear right at the start, it's how he found his way into doing this. Really, this was a whole vector I hadn't even considered. I'll let him share it with you, though, of just, Jay, if you'll kind of open us up with what's a bit about how you got into programming.
When I was 9, I started Java. I started playing a game called Minecraft. And from there, I wanted to program a Minecraft mod. So then I went into it, YouTube tutorials, Java tutorials, and found my way into making a Minecraft mod, which got like 17,000 views and 5,000 downloads in the first week.
So where did you go from there?
So then from there, I got into programming Java games with a bunch of friends, teaching them a little bit so that we can work together to make awesome things.
Would you like to tell us some things about the mod?
It was called Magical Wizards, and basically you become a wizard, and it adds a bunch of wizardry tools and minerals that you can mine, and a whole entire new dimension.
So by a new dimension, you mean a whole new world, a whole new terrain, a bit like the End or the Nether that are built into the normal version of Minecraft, but one that you've designed.
Yeah. It was like very blue and pink with a lot of like particle effects.
Were there some other mods that inspired your sort of visual direction or your design ideas?
I just liked all the other Magic mods that I had played.
Any specific ones stand out that you enjoyed playing?
Thaumcraft was one of the mods that very bigly inspired me.
Did your first mod's success that you released lead to creating more mods?
That was my only one that I released.
Even still, of course, that modding experience and that introduction to programming got you into making games. What was that like for you?
So I made the mod for Minecraft, and then I upload it to this website. I forget about it for like a week, and then I go and just find it, and I see it has this many views, this many downloads, and I think to myself, I think this is something I can do, and this is something that I want to try for it.
So even though it was years ago, for people who'd like to check out your mod, do you remember where you've uploaded it to?
I think it was Planet Minecraft, but I don't know.
Now, I was talking a little bit to your parents beforehand, and something they mentioned to me was this pretty sweet story I want to give you a chance to share with our listeners about a job offer came out of your Minecraft mod, potentially?
Right after my Minecraft mod went out, I just see an email from these people asking if I wanted to work for them, a full-time job in Colorado, and I live far away from that. So that was kind of scary at the first few moments of seeing that.
Did they say anything about how well this job might pay?
They were like, yeah, we're willing to pay a lot. And if you have any of your friends that are interested in doing this, you're welcome to come too. So then I'm like, me and my friends want to know how much you're paying me because we have a lot of jobs that we're busy with, just like bluffing to try and get them more money. And then they mail back with a large sum of money, and that like $110,000.
That's so rad.
Yeah. So then we emailed back, and then we were like, can we do it over Skype?
So they still wouldn't know your actual age.
And then we never heard from them again.
And now, if I remember correctly from the emails, you've been moving away from Minecraft toward making iPhone games, and you've been enjoying that?
Yeah, especially how the Apple Store makes it for you so easy to download.
Speaking of which, I've got your game right here. It's Oblivious, available for iPhone and iPad for anyone out there who'd like to try it. But of course, I know some of y'all out there might be driving or jogging or something. Jay, do you want to tell listeners a bit about what Oblivious is?
It's basically a game where you're an orb, I guess you can call it, and you have to try and escape from the sun particles because you're a water particle.
Okay, so there's sun particles which are trying to strike you, and you're a water particle you move with your finger, I'm assuming there's a backstory behind why they're water and sun particles?
You're basically, the earth has blown up and you're one water particle and a bunch of fire particles are trying to end the water army. I'm just pulling it up on my computer. It says, get away from the evil sun particles trying to hurt you. You're the last living water cell throughout the universe and you must save yourself before it's too late.
The style of the particle effects, for me at least, is reminiscent of the kinds of particles that we sometimes see out of Unity games. Was this built in Unity, or what did you develop the game another way?
I am not using Unity, but I am using Xcode and taking advantage of their SKS files.
Out of curiosity, was the choice of Xcode based in, is this kind of where you first have made games for iPhone? Have you tried Unity?
I have made a 3D racing game that I have not released to the public. But me and my friend made it on Unity 3D.
What sort of things did you do in the racing game?
It was just basically, there's one racer and there's a giant map that you just have to go around and avoid the obstacles and crashing.
Nice. So it's because you have a little bit of exposure to both, do you have a preference between using Xcode or using Unity?
I actually like Xcode a lot more than Unity because I feel like what would happen if Apple stopped supporting Unity or vice versa to Android? What if any of that happened? Then I had all my files on Android on that.
That's an important forward-looking consideration. I've had friends who've made games on tools before and run into that problem where the company stops updating their tool or they cease supporting a platform, and that leaves those developers in a bind where it's no longer in their control. So it's cool that you prefer using Xcode because you feel more like, more certainty it's going to still last with you. How has your experience been using Objective-C?
It was different because I have never programmed in any C languages before this. Though I do want to start learning C now that I've seen Objective-C. It was very difficult at first.
And of course, at the same time, I guess you came into iPhone development at a time when there's currently a language shift away from Objective-C, right?
Yeah, at the WWDC, they announced a new programming language, which is called Swift.
Have you had a chance to begin learning Swift yet?
Yeah, I downloaded the book, but I haven't started reading it yet.
To shift from the technical questions over to the gameplay side of Oblivious, so the longer you play, it adds more and more red sun particles to the game. What's the maximum number of obstacles or sun particles you can be dodging at once?
If you get good enough, you'll see 7.
Yeah, I was able to get a bunch. I don't think I made it all the way up to 7, though. What's your high score playing Oblivious?
My high score, without changing the score from the program, is I think 44.
How long of a play session did it take to reach that number of points?
Probably an hour. And my excuse was that I was bug testing.
Classic excuse for game developers. Actually, let's look back on kind of how the design has maybe evolved. Can you tell us about how Oblivious maybe used to be and maybe how it's been changing more recently?
If you go back to one of the previous updates of Oblivious, you would see a lot of different things. Back then, we didn't have the story because that was one of my friends. We didn't have the speed of the whole entire game was a lot slower because of one of my friends. The colors were totally different because of one of my friends, but now they work together, these colors, and it's really cool.
It's awesome to hear that you've been able to continue iterating and improving on the game's design through the feedback of your friends. I know one of the important sort of barriers for someone getting into game development is to learn to be able to take and seek that kind of feedback and integrate it back into their games. And so it's so cool to hear you're doing that. Out of curiosity, why did you choose to use particles for your main representation of water and sun?
Referring back to my Minecraft experience, all my friends, for all of the mods that added sprites like that, they were addicted to the particles and the particle effects. So then say log a server for an hour, come back to my house being full of yellow and pink particle effects. So it was mostly my friends' influence that influenced the app in a very big way.
Good point. I think sometimes we forget that there's a certain sort of magic in the spectacle of particles. Now I'm guessing too, because if your main graphics are particles, you probably were able to keep the whole program pretty small, right?
It only takes up 0.4 megabytes, the actual application.
Well, shoot, I guess that's further evidence that it's not output from Unity, which probably would have bloated it with some additional files and libraries and so on. Now, I want to dive just a little bit deeper into the story side of the game. If you don't mind giving us a quick refresher of kind of the high level of what's going on story-wise.
The world has blown up, and the sun particles are trying to get rid of all the water particles. So you're the last particle in the whole entire space. So it's like a space-ish background.
You briefly mentioned earlier that the story sort of evolved from thinking or maybe talking through things with a friend as a later iteration of the game.
Game was built, and then in the second update, that what added a story, because I was like, yeah, dude, download the app Oblivious. And then they're like, okay. And they downloaded it, and then they're like, so how do you play? And then they're like, what's the storyline behind this? And like, why chased by all these red things?
That's neat and a little unusual that you came into it focused first on the core gameplay mechanics, and then as a later thought about it, kind of took the imaginative layer approach of kind of then, what do these represent? What are these in the world? About how long did you spend on developing Oblivious?
The actual game only took like 2 weeks, but then with all the bugs and stuff, that probably added another 2 weeks to it, and we're still fighting bugs.
1 month turnaround for an iPhone game made in Xcode is pretty great. Do you want to tell us a bit about some of the bugs that you've been battling?
There were many, one of which, the red things, they would not move.
All right, you're referring to getting the sun particles to chase the water particle.
Yeah, and those are very hard to make to move. And open source has been a big help, because I've seen like how other people make their sprites move. And so then I can take bits and pieces of their technology and move it into my application.
That's great to hear that you've been able to leverage some of the example source code and open source projects that are out there. Are there some other bugs you've had to deal with for the game?
The iAds, they aren't really working right now. So that's another bug that I fixed, except I do not understand why the App Store review team let it go in. But it was accepted during WWDC, so I guess they were busy.
It's hilarious. Yeah, I'm always kind of wondering how much that they've increasingly maybe handed off from a thorough inspection to maybe some largely automated scripts. What did the bug with iAds look like?
They pull up, except they're just white, and then they disappear. And then another bug has been, you've probably seen it 1,000 times because it's a major bug, and I have not figured out how to fix it, was the scoreboard glitch. As you, like, if you're playing it right now, you can see it just gets stuck, and it will say, take a break at the bottom right if you play multiple times in a row.
Oh, take a break as in it's like the feature you'd see on a Wii or those kind of games where it tries to warn you to play in moderation.
Yeah, I don't want it to be like a Flappy Bird where people are playing for hours and getting addicted. So I want it to be like that Piano Tiles game where like every 20 minutes it'll give you a notification, like just check the time, because I don't want people to get like addicted to their devices.
Are there features or pieces that you're continuing to work on?
The core gameplay is there, but some of my friends, I still don't even know if I'm going to possibly add this. I don't know. You're this main blue thing. I'd want to look into like getting points and adding a point system. And if you get enough points, you can change the color of your sprite.
Would you want changing the player sprite to affect their speed or mobility or anything, or is it purely a visual change?
It would basically just be a visual thing.
And I think I also remember from the emails that even though there's not music in the version I've played, music's coming into the game soon in another update.
I did get a licensing agreement with Approaching Nirvana, which is a very good music creator. So there'll be music from Approaching Nirvana in the next update, but I'll let it be a surprise for the viewers which song.
What are some of the things that you've done to raise awareness of the game or to get more people to try it?
I've just been trying to tell my friends who would tell friends. And then say I join, like I barely play Minecraft anymore, but when I join a Minecraft server and say I meet someone, and I'll say, hey, check out the app Oblivious in the App Store.
So in a way it's kind of come full circle where not only was Minecraft what got you into it, but it's in a way still kind of your marketing channel, which is neat. Was Oblivious your first iPhone game?
I had a school project and I wanted to make an extra credit thing for it. And that was my first iPhone app.
Awesome. What was your extra credit iPhone game like?
It was like a helicopter game where you had to go through the barriers, except you were like the Pharaoh Hammurabi and you had to go through pyramids.
And actually, if I remember correctly, you've also made another small iPhone game also based in ancient history?
That one, again, was for a school extra credit project, but the technology of that could be expanded into so much more, because it's basically the same idea as Doodle Jump, where you start out as a person and you have to keep on moving your way up the ladder, and you must climb all platforms to save all of Egypt to defeat chaos. That was like what we had to do, because the main guy, his name was Ra, who was like an Egyptian god, and Chaos was the bad guy. So he had to jump up to try and reach Chaos, which he never reached because it was an infinity game, just like Doodle Jump.
Out of curiosity, is it becoming more common for students to be making games as their extra credit, or is there class projects?
Very unusual, because some of my friends, they would just like make a model magic god for extra credit. Then like me and my group for this, I would say we took that extra step to try and get more extra credit points.
Speaking of which, I guess since it was done for class, it must have been under a tight deadline.
Well, for Raw Jump, the project was due on like 3 days before we came up with the idea. So we got straight to work. Some people work on the images, and then I was mostly programming the game. Somebody was writing all the text that we were going to write in the main menu. And then on the last day, right before it was assigned, we put it all together and it came out great.
Do you have a preference between when you get to work on teams like that as opposed to the games where you work mostly by yourself?
Yeah, I would prefer to work with collaborators because I know the basics of Photoshop, but it's very, very time consuming learning all of Photoshop. For one of my apps in the App Store, my friend, he contributed just by doing the images, which was a very, very big help for me.
Are there other sides or parts of game development for you'd rather at this point in your life reach out to a collaborator than to be something that you do yourself?
If I need a website, I have a friend out of school who does HTML and CSS. So if I need a website, I'll say I'll pay you $20 for a website that does blah blah.
Out of curiosity for how your game programming maybe fits into a bigger picture of your programming overall, are there some other pieces of software, other apps that you've been developing or have developed?
I've worked on 2 other apps. 2 of them are in the App Store. So one of them is Noters. So the Apple Store, they track everything that you type. So then this will stop them from doing so, especially with the iOS 8 update. They track to do the quick type, which is a new feature. So this will stop them from doing it. But it's basically a note-taking app where you can delete your notes. So say you're passing your friend, hey, you want to meet this weekend? And your teacher sees you, you just press a button and it clears.
Rad. So it's a privacy app, but of course designed for lack of a better way to put it, your kind of use case of privacy, partly, I guess, technically from the government, but really your government, your teachers, your administrators. It's kind of awesome.
Currently, my project that I'm working on right now, behind the scenes, I guess, is this thing called Chatterbox. And it's an instant messenger that has the ability to send messages over HTTPS connections. That way they can't be tracked. And then it has the ability to delete the messages after a certain amount of time, which Apple is adding, of course, in the next update. But it's not adding like this because the user who sends the message can pick when the message is going to be deleted. It's kind of like Snapchat in a way.
It's exciting for me to hear that in addition to your interest in game programming and games, you've also got an interest in developing privacy and security related software, which of course the world will have plenty more need for in the years ahead. Speaking of things sort of in the years ahead, what's your current learning objective, or what are some things you're currently working on picking up?
I want to learn 2 languages, which are C and Swift at the moment, and I eventually want to expand Oblivious onto Android.
What are your recommendations for other people out there who might also like to learn even just some of the software skills that you've already developed in Xcode and in software programming? Were there formal classes that you took, or how did you go about learning what you know so far?
I didn't take any formal classes, but just jump right into documentation and YouTube videos. And Stack Overflow has been a very big help where you can just type in your programming questions and most of the questions will have answers. And if not, you can ask the community and they're very bright and they'd be happy to answer your questions.
And now, inevitably, some listeners out there are probably wondering, are your parents software developers? Are your parents programmers? Were they able to help answer questions and guide you through this process?
Well, my resources have mainly come from online because none of my family is really that much into technology. So that's been like a big step for me.
I'd say so. That level of self-guided learning and even just this reminder to everyone out there of how much can be learned on one's own through the resources online is really kind of inspiring. And we've talked so much today about your programming and your software. Are all of your interests technical? Are there some other hobbies that you have that are either maybe even just unrelated to game development?
It's very much technical, but I also like woodworking. And I once made a solar-powered remote control car, which was really fun to play with, but that accidentally died from running into something.
Outside of that solar panel car, do you have other experience yet playing with hardware?
Not really, but next year I'm going to get into robotics, which I'm excited about.
Is there a particular type or purpose or style of robotics that you're most interested in yet?
Just robotics in general, because it's going to be my first year in robotics.
Right, of course, that makes perfect sense. To swing back into games for a little bit, Oblivious is a 2D game, obviously Minecraft's 3D. Do you have an interest in developing 3D games?
So Oblivious, I don't think it would have been suitable in 3D. It just like wouldn't have looked right. Yeah. And but Minecraft, I don't think it looks well in 2D because there was that game, another game exactly.
Oh, you're probably referring to Terraria.
Yeah, exactly, Terraria. I don't think it's nearly as fun as the actual Minecraft.
So maybe, or at least it depends on the type of game that you're developing. Now, what kind of games do you like to play, or maybe what sort of games have you been playing?
I like that action games, but I like this strategy part of the action game. I just like 2 days ago built my own computer. So I got Watch Dogs with that graphics card. So I've just been into that the past few days.
What sort of things do you like about Watch Dogs?
Well, there's like how much detail is put into it. And like if you look at somebody that they will just like look away, like that amount of detail that they put into the app is amazing.
Now, obviously, those kind of games are a product of a whole different scale of, dozens or even hundreds of developers having to work together. Are there bits and pieces you've been able to take from that and look at, tinker with, work on, take an interest in?
Very much the bits and pieces because like me and my friends, we came up with this giant extravagant idea. I want to work with a bigger team, but I feel like it gets out of control in those few times I tried for small projects.
Absolutely. Sounds like you've already got a pretty clear sense for how challenges can scale as a team starts to grow in size. What are some of the games that you've played in years prior? Maybe some even just slightly older stuff.
Mario Kart on the Wii was my favorite game as a child, and it showed me like how much effort you could put into a game and how much like Mario Kart's expanded. Like I just saw that a new Mario Kart game came out, which was really cool.
Are there some smaller games, either casual on the web or mobile, that maybe are closer to the size and scale of the games that you're developing that you also play?
One of my friends, he got me addicted to this game called Impossible Road, and that's a really fun game where you're like this ball and you have to stay on a 3D generated road. It's very difficult. Yeah. And then another one is Dexterous, which is another Infinity game. Now thinking about it, I only play Infinity games, and it's where you're this square and you have to try and dodge these, I guess, obstacles you can call them, and it's a really fun game.
Which parts of the game development process do you most enjoy?
Writing for its like creativity side. I like just drawing out the storyboards, thinking of new ideas, writing down those ideas, showing it to friends, and then finalizing it in the actual process of turning that into an application.
You've of course got quite a head start on a number of your peers in terms of your programming proficiency and skill set, and beginning to grow a portfolio of games and other software you've developed. What do you see happening in your future? And I know it might even be a number of years away yet, but do you have a vision yet for what kind of things you might want to study or go on to do?
Well, I want to keep on programming as a side job, but I want to go into business as like my main thing. But my lifelong goal is to go to MIT and then do a double major there in business and computer science.
I majored in computer science. I minored in business, but just from personal experience, for what it's worth, I've been pretty happy with the computer science business kind of combo. I guess there's no pressure yet to really decide. You've still got a few years yet to think about it.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see where life takes us.
And just to close things out, any advice that you'd like to offer other people out there of any age who would like to get into making video games?
Just dig right in. Don't be afraid.
Awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time to have this chat today. And I really look forward to seeing the games that you're going to be making in the future.
Thank you. See you later.
That interview you've just been listening to was actually recorded about a year before the release of this, back in June 2014. Now, naturally, that means that Jay's been busy ever since, creating some new things. I recently reached out to Jay to find out about his more recent projects, and in early 2015, he launched his biggest application yet. It's called Matchers, M-A-T-C-H-E-R-S. It's a game that challenges concentration. It's really pretty clever. It's simple, but the more you play it, the more you'll see there's complexity there too. If you'd like to check it out for yourself, you can find it available now on iOS App Store as well as the Google Play Store. Just search for Matchers. Goodness, what a fun story. I'm really, when I set up this Game Developers Like You podcast series, I didn't really even know it, but I guess it's these stories like Jay's that help lead us in new ways of thinking about how people are making games, how people are learning to make games, getting into it, so we can help share those stories with more people out there. So I want to thank Jay Bhavnani for his time. I want to thank again Danny Baranowski for the music he's allowed us to use for the intro and outro segments. And once again, Krista McFunkyPants for the opening bit. I'll see you next series episode of Game Developers Like You.